cuppa, dance and buzzo.
Ooh, slip me a slug from that wonderful mug, and I'll cut a rug that's snug in a jug. Drop your nickel in my pot, Joe.
Taking it slow, waiter, waiter, percolator. I love coffee and tea. I love the Java jar when it loves me. Well, the coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Boy.
Hello. That sounded really good. That extra week was worth it on that practice. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first service after spring equinox. So that means that for the next 6 months, at least in this hemisphere, we are tilting toward the light. And that's awesome, both as a fact of science and as a metaphor. But you may not feel like that these days as you look out and look at the state of the world. It's like the globe is being carved up in front of our eyes, and the new world order that was established after World War II that was based on cooperation and care is being blown to bits. And you open a paper these days, and it feels like the only story is what, at least around here, is what my friend John calls the Trumpster fire in Canada's basement. And it's like, if you talk about anything else, it's almost like you're inviting the response. Come on, man, wake up and smell the coffee. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. And not because we're trying to hide from the world and what's going on, but I think that there's something in the story of coffee that holds clues to the way forward for all of us here. There was a company called Caribou Coffee, and they had a slogan, "Life's short, stay awake for it." And I feel like our services are short too, and so we need to savor every drop of what goes on in here for the next hour. So we're going to start with hymn number 389, Gathered Here.
Okay, so this is a round. So we'll go all the way through once, and then we'll start with that side, and then do the middle side, and then we'll do that side. Please rise.
Well, welcome once again. Welcome to North Shore Unitarian Church. Thank you for braving the weather and the bridges and all the competing things you could be doing with your Sunday morning. I'm thrilled to be here with you as your service leader this morning. My name is Bruce Grierson, and we are a lay-led congregation now, And what that means for us is that a team of 5 of us shares the job of shepherding these services. We call it distributive ministry. And it's only possible because we've had an amazing amount of help from so many people in here. For those of you joining us for the first time, and maybe you're new to Unitarian Universalism altogether, I hope it's been a relatively painless process for you so far. The hard part's over, you're through the door and past security. You found a seat, and now it's someone else's job to fly the plane. No, seriously, we're glad you're here. No matter what brought you, no matter what your affiliations or spiritual path, past or present, no matter who you are or who you love, we hope you feel welcome here. Here on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people. The work of reconciliation is ongoing. Let's try not to let these land acknowledgements become a rote thing. You know, they're important. I'm really proud that it's something Canadians do, and we continue to do. It matters, though it's sometimes hard to measure the way that it matters. Let's keep doing it. Now for the chalice lighting this morning, I'd like to introduce you to somebody who will be new to some of you. This is Jay Zimmerman. Come on up, Jay. You've been coming for a few months now. When did you first poke your nose in the door?
Beginning of December. Over here?
Yeah, sure.
Beginning of December.
Okay. It feels like you've been through, so 4 months. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
But I have been to lots of other Unitarian services in other cities.
Okay. How do we stack up? That's not fair. Okay, so here's a bit about Jay, just to set you up. We don't have enough time for me to set him up properly. I'm going to say you are a man who takes a lot of big swings, Jay, at a lot of different areas. You have degrees in applied physics. You tell me if I'm getting any of this wrong. Degrees in applied physics and math, advanced degree in natural resource management. You have strong feelings about and are writing a book about existential risk, particularly China and U.S. Tensions heating up there and what might happen. Kind of? You're not writing a book.
Slightly wrong. I'm writing a book about how we can solve the climate problem, the 5 big things we need to do, and how we can finance that. Because I work for the World Bank, and this isn't a World Bank book, but in the parallel to that.
Okay.
I worry about existential risk, and I am writing an essay about the China-U.S. War risk.
Okay. And in your spare time, you're writing writing a lot about the development of sentient neural networks based on your almost completed PhD in neuroscience at UBC.
Right.
And you speak 4 languages, or 3.5 languages. So Jay, we've invited you here today to talk about none of that. What I'm interested in is how you feel about coffee.
I feel good about coffee, but I feel it's important to get the dose right. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm pretty sensitive to coffee. And if I overdose, I get very excited, and I get very nervous, and I feel anxious, and I don't quite know what to do. And then, my concentration falters. So it's very important to get the dose right. I'm actually hitting a little bit too much right now. My RPM is a little bit, keyed up from the get-go without coffee.
We don't want a power surge. Can somebody monitor that?
That's right. So I generally, I order a half-calf latte or a half-calf flat white when I go to one of those fancy cafes. Mm-hmm. However, coffee is a subtle thing, and there's so many different kinds and varieties. I'm sure we'll still invent more. And a peak coffee experience I had was in 2012. I was on holiday in Croatia. And Croatia used to be part of the Turkish Empire, right, the Ottomans' empire. And they have Turkish coffee there. And what they do is they grind the coffee beans to a very fine powder, and they put it in a cup, and then they pour hot water on top of it. There's no filter involved at all. They stir some sugar into it, then you wait for a few minutes to let the grounds settle, and then you just drink it directly. It has a different texture, and it's really delicious. So I have an idea, and I've checked this with the boss, so it won't be too much of a shock to anybody. I'm thinking that it would be cool if we collectively had a deal where, once every couple of weeks, somebody, not me necessarily, me once, if somebody else volunteers to also do it on another weekend, comes along and says, I'm going to cook some specialty coffee for the whole gang here, right? And so I would have a go at making Turkish coffee. I would practice beforehand because I've never done it before. And so if anybody else is willing to stick their hand up or they'll stick their neck out right now and say, I'm in if you are, then I'm in if you are. Any takers?
Hey. Hans is in. Hans is in.
Okay, Hans is in. All right. So
okay. I think it might be a go. We're going to circle back on that one. I like it, Jay, very much. Thank you so much. And Jay is going to light our chalice this morning.
I would like to say something about Turkish coffee.
Few words then. Okay.
That I'm a piano tuner. I started out in Vienna. I tuned a piano for an Iranian princess who was studying at the university in Vienna. She made me a cup of coffee. It was Turkish coffee. She added a bit of rose water and then told me, as I was drinking the coffee, giving me a tiny little silver spoon to eat the powder from the bottom. Because that takes away the instant rush you can get from coffee, and it slows it down and improves digestion. So I had both the coffee and the powder, and I felt very happy there.
I think we have the right people in place for this coffee business. All right, Jay. I hope you're not too cranked up to light the chalice here. Okay. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering.
May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace.
Thank you. And then there's a second candle here. I'll have you swung over there. Here's our candle of joys and sorrows. We got a couple of joys. We have birthdays today. Deanna Diaz today. Chris Miller today. Anyone else? There's Chris. Anyone else today? Anyone else have a happy, have a joy to Auntie in here? Okay, here's a joy, not from this congregation. New from the world of science. Swiss researchers have just invented a biodegradable battery made of paper. This is true. You do it up on a 3D printer. It's made of carbon, cellulose, glycerin, and table salt. And the chemist is looking very carefully at me. And it activates when you add 1 drop of water. It can store electricity for hours and has been used to power a small digital clock as a prototype. When you no longer need the battery, you pop it in the compost, and within 2 months, it's completely gone. This is the future, maybe. Anyway, it warranted a spot on our list of joys today. Anyone have any concerns you'd like me to say? Anyone to mention? Okay. So for our final candle, the candle of global concerns, Omar El-Akkad, anyone know that name? Former Globe and Mail foreign correspondent, is getting a lot of attention for a new novel, ingeniously titled, "One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This." In that book, there's a character who was caught in the middle of a hellacious war, and at one point this guy, looking back on it, says, "What was safety anyway but the sound of a bomb falling on someone else's house?" Think of the people forced to live like that, when the only time you know you're okay is when you know someone else isn't. When your only brief, thank you, Jay, when your only brief respite from chaos comes at the expense of others. That is the dark side of the interconnected web. We are each other's scaffolding, and sometimes we are each other's cannon fodder, and none of us will ever live long enough or become wise enough for that to make sense. Let's take a moment of silence. Alrighty, so, you juice. Last August, we were at Elliott, the Unitarian Family Camp in Seabeck, Washington. Many of you will know it. And a moment happened just as the morning program was finishing up in the meeting hall. There had been a little learning, a little singing, a little bit of hugging. Now we're filing out the door to meet the day, and we see that the young adults have formed a human arch, a tunnel of outstretched hands. You remember how we used to sing the kids out here? And it was exactly like that. We were being sung out. And everyone ducks under the outstretched hands and proceeds down the tunnel, which snakes down and directly to the coffee urn. And the young adults are singing, "We hold you in our love as you go to get your coffee. May your mind be alert as you go." And I thought, this may be the most Unitarian thing I have ever seen. There's an old UU joke. An arsonist was loose in town burning down churches. When the Protestant church was on fire, the pastor ran in and saved the Bible. When the Catholic, you already know where I'm going with it. I almost don't need to do it. When the Catholic Church was on fire, the priest ran in and saved the Eucharist. When the Unitarian Church was on fire, Bob ran in and saved the coffee maker. I love it that it's Bob and not the minister. That may be my favorite detail, because we're all ministers here, right? So coffee, it's what we run on. Now, I know that there are a few conscientious objectors in this room, and I know there are a lot of tea drinkers, but let's face it, for most of us, Unitarians, coffee is practically one of our 8 principles. It's our sacramental wine and the psychoactive fuel of our deepest philosophical soundings. And if you're wondering why that is, as I was when I embarked on this crazy reflection, well, the answer would take an entire weekend-long coffee-fueled symposium. But I'll try to give you the scratch pad version of it right now. You'll have noticed we're a talky bunch. And coffee plays right to our strengths there. It goes to the brain and loosens the tongue. Caffeine is the molecule of narrative. And you're going, wait, I thought that was alcohol. Well, booze relaxes inhibitions, but that's different. Hardly anybody becomes more eloquent when they're blotto. Coffee's like a bloodhound. It goes sniffing for what you really want to say and flushes it out into the open. It dials the real you up to 11. But that's a minor point. Here's a bigger one. Coffee is the great connector. It brings together people so that their best ideas can have a romp in the hay together. Coffee houses are crucibles of creativity. The writer Matt Ridley investigated how many innovations throughout history have a coffee house somewhere in their story. And I forget the percentage, but it's a lot. So have you heard this meme, 50 cups of coffee? So 50 cups of coffee is kind of the new 10,000 hours. The idea is that getting together for 50 coffees with 50 people will change your life. Because bottom line, how your life goes depends on the people you meet and the conversations you have. And coffee is the golden key. I say, can I buy you a coffee? That's our default social overture. Though sometimes it comes with the catch, can I buy you a coffee and pick your brain? I bet a lot of people have said that to you, Jay. The ask is the thing. Can I buy you a coffee? Well, frankly, most people can buy their own darn cup of coffee. They're not saying yes to the coffee. They're saying yes to you, to breaking beans with you. The language here is Esperanto. When you sip your coffee in the morning, you're touching something pretty close to a universal experience. Coffee is the world's #1 beverage by far, consumed by 90% of us. The smell of coffee is the most widely recognized smell in the world. This is the gustatory imprint of us as a species. Remember the Voyager 2 spacecraft that we sent out in the late 70s as sort of on a one-way trip with artifacts of Earth aboard it to say, this is us? They should have put a bag of coffee beans aboard that thing. It would be like, greetings, friend. Can we share a cuppa with you? And pick your extraterrestrial brain. Fun fact, in 2002, astronomers calculated the average color of the universe. They sampled the light coming in from all the known galaxies. The result was a little paint chip that was not quite off-white, a little bit beigey. They dubbed that color cosmic latte. So did you get that? The universe looks like a cup of coffee. But here's where it gets complicated. The story of us and coffee, coffee and us. This story spans the full spectrum of human endeavor, from the high to the low, from our greatest triumphs to our most shameful transgressions. Caffeine fueled the modern world. Huzzah! But on the production lines of the Industrial Revolution, coffee was fed to the men to squeeze longer hours out of them, while the leisure class feasted on the spoils. There they are. And don't let's even get started on what was done to the rainforest to harvest those beans, or who was indentured to pick them. The modern mocha, writes Cyril Vowell, is a bittersweet concoction of imperialism, genocide, invention, and consumerism, served with whipped cream on top. No wonder it costs so much. Ouch. Okay. So this is the thinky part of the brain talking right now, weighing it all up, absorbing the history lesson, saying 10 Hail Marys, or the humanist equivalent, buying 10 tons of carbon credits. But the thinky part of your brain has no dominion where we are heading next here. The thinky part of your brain sort of shuts off as you cradle the warm mug, and as a lovely slurp of coffee hits your tongue, and you feel the liquid on its downward journey, and inside you it blooms like the slow detonation of everyday joy. Wait, is this a religious experience I'm talking about? Could it be? You want to find out? I've just the guy I'd like you to meet. There he is. Okay, so it's 2005, Calgary, Alberta, and this gentleman you see here is at the Calgary Stampede, standing in line for the pancake breakfast. His name is Phil Robertson, and he overhears an exchange in front of him. Ethel, how's the coffee? That's good, Ethel's friend said. It's not bad, it's good. Phil repeats this back to himself. It's good, it's not bad, it's good. It's good because it's not bad. And that strikes Phil as just plain wrong as a measure of the worth of things. That's a low bar, man. Now, I will disclose here that Phil is my nephew. Now, that either makes me shamefully biased and probably a paid shill for the guy, or perfectly positioned to give you the straight goods on who he is as a person. So here's the truth. Phil is a young man who has lived his whole life in opposition to, it's good, it's not bad. To Phil, things aren't good when they're not bad. Things are good when they're good. And frankly, even good doesn't cut it. He's drawn to things that are great, and he tries to make things that are great. So Phil trained as an electrical engineer, and at the moment of this pancake line epiphany, he'd just pushed pause on his career. He'd been working designing cell phones, first at Panasonic and then at Nortel, and not loving it. Not loving it the way, for instance, that he loves coffee. So, for some reason, that innocuous comment from Ethel's friend there created a moment of reckoning, and he thought, what is our purpose here with this one wild and precious life? Shouldn't we, all of us, if we have the privilege and the opportunity to, do a job that we're deeply passionate about? So Phil got home. He called up his good friend Sebastian Stabitz. You should see how that's spelled. Seb was also a colleague. They'd worked together for years, and Seb was also not loving the cell phone biz. And he was just as big a coffee nut as Phil. So Phil says to Seb, how wedded are you to your job right now? And by the end of that phone call, they're in the coffee business together, in their minds, if not yet for real. Seb had a little family, so he couldn't quite quit and pull up stakes, but Phil was single and footloose, so he became the R&D scout. He moved to Vancouver, crashed on a friend's couch for 6 months while he soaked up the culture of the only place in Canada that really gets coffee, or really got it at the time, Vancouver. He hung around high-end artisanal coffee spots like the Elixir room, pestering the owner with questions and drinking lots and lots of coffee. He talked the owner of another shop into letting him apprentice for free. There's a mysterious precision, almost an alchemy, to making high-end coffee like this. Phil and Seb are going, look, we're engineers. We are going to science the heck out of this. Every aspect of it, from the origin of the beans, to the roasting, to the flavor profiles that we gin up in the first shop that we eventually open. And they didn't have to wait long for eventually. Within 8 months of Phil's return to Calgary, they bought some equipment on credit, rented a stall at the farmer's market, and hung out their little shingle, the Phil and Sebastian Coffee Company. And Phil and Seb said, there's two kinds of excellence. There's excellence of the product, and there's excellence of the process. The second one is about ethics. We don't want to add to the sordid history of coffee making. That means we've got to be intimately involved in every point of the supply chain. So they each focused on one region. Seb would handle South America, because he speaks Spanish, and Phil would concentrate on Africa. And a kind of code of conduct emerged. You build relationships with the farmers, and you pay them above market rates. You roast the beans yourself. You bring your employees along like chefs, not baristas, so that they train for 4 to 6 months before they even pour their first cup. And you pay them generously too. And one day, one of them, I can't remember whether it was Phil or Seb, scribbles down the mission statement. If everyone at every point in the chain is not happy, we have failed. It would not be overstating things to call this a mission. To bring the ambrosia of the gods down to the good people of Calgary, Alberta, and blow their minds. This isn't about trying to replicate some great coffee someone else has made, Phil told me. It's more like trying to figure out what's even possible. So I still remember the first day I set foot in a Phil and Sebastian coffee shop, the real thing, not a stall at the market, their first store. Phil served me himself. That no longer happens. They have nine locations and 60 employees, so Phil's up to his elbows behind the scenes. But on that day, he was my server. He looked proud but focused. I asked, what should I order? I'd recommend the standard, he said. I assumed that meant the run-of-the-mill. Then he explained the name. The standard, he said, is the standard against all else is measured. Okay. But honestly, it felt like a chapel in there. And what the staff was quietly performing felt liturgical. You know, the rituals of the day, selecting the beans in the morning, measuring out water, adjusting the grind to the barometric pressure in the room multiple times a day. I said, do people really notice that? Phil shrugged. I notice it. And it was on that day that Phil helped me understand what he and Seb were trying to do. He said, you can think of our evolving relationship with coffee as a progression. 3 waves. First wave, said Phil, is Nescafe. Instant freeze-dried coffee, or gas station coffee. He said, this is coffee with a purpose, so you don't fall asleep. That's first wave right there. Okay. First wave is all about the caffeine. The second wave, he said, starts to be about the taste. All those sweet, milky concoctions with names like Italian motor oils. You're grinding your own beans now, so that's a step up, but you're still masking the flavor of the coffee, so it's still not all that good. So second wave would be Starbucks. Third wave is about purity. It's about the taste of the coffee. The roasting process, he said, is completely different. And it's all about the farm. Third wave is understanding at an agricultural level and a processing level what makes coffee good, Phil said. And the third wave has another dimension that's harder to measure, but I would say just as important. The third wave is a philosophical stance. The third wave is at war with the Starbucksization of the world, where we let life on Earth become a giant corporate monoculture where you always know exactly what you're going to get because it's what everybody else gets. And it's good because it's not bad. And then out it came, my first taste of the third wave. Phil passed it to me with both hands. My little cup of the standard. As different from your Timmy's Double-Double as a wolf is from a golden retriever. A hint that you're dealing with third wave coffee is that it tastes better, not worse, as it cools. So if any of you are still nursing that coffee from earlier, try it now. See what you think. Okay. Because both these boys are engineers, they kept tinkering. Test a little, fly a little, test a little, fly a little. And the coffee got better and better week on week. I don't know if anyone saw the film version of Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, but there's a scene where the town priest levitates after sipping a mug of transcendently good coffee. That's what they were going for. So in Calgary, word quickly spread. People were eager to dip their toes into this buzzy new thing. And soon there were lineups out the door, like a 20-minute lineup for a latte. It was a problem. You can get lattes there. It was a problem. So one poster, when this happened, I wrote it down, thinking maybe I would use this one day. One customer posted online, "It is inhumane, in my opinion, to force people who have a genuine medical need for coffee to wait in line behind people who apparently view it as some sort of recreational activity." So Phil and Sebastian had a number of different coffees you could buy, and at the high end, they were quite expensive. One day in the shop, Sebastian overheard a customer complaining about the $10 coffee on the menu. Remember, this is 15 years ago, so $10 is a lot for a cup of coffee. The guy says, $10? Come on, man. In Paris or Rome or New York, I could understand, but Calgary? So Sebastian hears this. He cannot bite his tongue. He says, look, where you are is immaterial. This coffee is expensive because it's low batch and rare and expensive for us to import. That's it. The guy shakes his head. I've traveled the world and I've never seen a $10 cup of coffee. Sebastian says, well, there's the door. Go travel the world. Okay. There's a fine line between a connoisseur and a snob. The idea of elitism arouses strong feelings. Even the word is triggering. It's a complicated conversation. And not long ago, Phil and Seb cranked up the temperature on that conversation. So last year, an extremely rare batch of coffee beans from a high-elevation experimental farm in Panama came up for auction. This farm. 20 kilograms of beans went on the market. They sold for $100,000. There were 1,300 bidders. Phil and Seb managed to nab 1 kilo. They worked out how much they had to sell it for just to break even. They decided the price for a cup of that Finca Sofia Geisha 2024 would be $100. Phil put in a 36-hour shift preparing for this 1-hour event. The paying customers were ushered in. He'd made up a beautiful room. There was soft music. He told a story or two. He prepared people for what was about to happen for them, or maybe to them. It was a bit like the Japanese tea ceremony. You know, your senses are on high alert, and the vibe is, be here now. This moment will never come again. And now, before anyone took a sip, Phil knew he had a little bit of a sales job on his hands. It became clear that a lot of these customers were not coffee sophisticates, not third wavers at all.
People would walk in and they'd only ever had, this might surprise you, but we had people that were willing to pony up $100 and they only ever drank like a Nespresso at home. They never had anything sort of more.
They never skied the intermediate slopes.
They never took, yeah, exactly. They went straight to the double, triple black from the Bunny Hill.
Okay, so they went to the double black diamond slope from the Bunny Hill. And I got to confess, I'm one of those Bunny Hill people, you know, maybe low intermediate, but I can relate to those people. Let's see, he goes on.
And again, I think this is the barrier. It's not financial. The barrier is what we're trying to do with coffee is so radically different that it might as well be called a different name. It is a totally different product. And I frankly have even been able to achieve this with my whole family. When I look at like, you know, my extended family, like if they buy some of my coffee and they're like, don't tell Phil I don't like it. You know, it's like, it's because they haven't had that opportunity to be brought into that experience.
Don't tell Phil I don't like it. I like that. I've heard that many times. Okay, so this $100 cup of coffee event divided people. Phil reports that virtually all the paying customers said it was totally worth it, once in a lifetime experience. But some outsiders were like, are you freaking kidding me? You guys just dropped $100 for a cup of coffee? You're crazy. You've been duped. This stuff doesn't even taste good. So Sebastian found himself handling the blowback. He said, you know, the problem is that it's coffee, and you're not used to thinking about coffee this way. If it were a $100 glass of scotch, you might not blink an eye. Maybe you'd go, ooh, I wonder how old that is. But if I set out a $100 cup of coffee, you're like, what's going on with this world?
The common ground is found in the things that each of us.
No, not that one. Sorry, that one. Yeah, that comes up. We're saving that one. So, what is going on with this world, at least in this little Alberta corner of it, was a social ritual as old as time. I mean, we're a tribal species. We sort ourselves out by our tastes, by who we believe ourselves to be. Stephen Harper, when he was PM, used to say that there was an easy way to tell a Canadian's politics. You look into their coffee cup. If it's a double-double from Timmy's, they're probably a conservative. There's dirt under their fingernails, they're getting her done. When Canadian soldiers were sent to Afghanistan and Iraq after 9/11, the first thing they asked for and received was a carton of Tim Hortons coffee. Soccer mums have run on Timmy's for whole seasons. Whereas, if it's a soy latte from Starbucks that someone's cradling in their dainty fingers, they're a liberal, according to Stephen Harper. I don't know what happens if you're NDP or Green. Maybe you got a spirulina smoothie in that cup. And by the way, for him, Starbucks was shorthand for fancy coffee, right? Phil and Sebastian level coffee wasn't even on his radar. So this is obviously bogus, but it's vivid, and because it's vivid, it's sticky and a little dangerous. The line is stark there. It's the people versus the elites. And that is a revolutionary divide. The elites had better watch their necks. So now I've basically told you that Phil and Sebastian's mission was to educate the palate of the benighted Alberta cowpokes. And when you put it that way, it does sound elitist. You know, like a Henry Higgins routine. Not everyone wants to be Eliza Doolittle in that play. But there's another way to look at it. You could say that what their mission really is, what was and is to enrich people's experience of their short time on earth, to walk just ahead of us and kick open the doors of perception, to give us the gift of this thing we've never tasted the likes of in our entire life. And in that light, elitism doesn't sound so bad, right? So long as you're not hoarding the beauty for yourself, but you're raising the ceiling of the cathedral and going, come on in. There's plenty of transcendence to go around. How should a person be? It's a question that we knock around a lot in here when we get into the weeds on depth, meaning, and purpose. Well, Plato believed the pursuit of beauty and excellence is the highest expression of morality. He's basically saying, go elitism. The pursuit of beauty implies discernment and judgment. But a lot of faiths would say, well, the highest virtue is acceptance and humility, basically the opposite of judgment. So this is the million-dollar question. Can you be discerning selectively, like some coffee beans are better than others, but no person is? I asked Phil if he saw any way to square this up, to shrink the gap between the two mindsets. How do you get the Tim Hortons people and the Phil and Sebastian people to meet on the land bridge and go, do we have something to say to each other? Where's the common ground? Here he goes. Oh, come on, Phil, you can do it.
The common ground is found in the things that each of us care about. So if you look, almost everyone cares about something. And that's the thing that we can connect on. And it doesn't even have to be the same thing. Like someone can say they can care about their stamp collection or their ant farm. I'm not interested in those things in particular, but if someone is, and that's their point of interest and that's what they care about, I will find common ground because we both care deeply about something.
You're going to love the upcoming service on ant farms. I'm just saying. No, I actually think there's a lot of wisdom in what he just said there. I mean, the level of our caring is a potential point of alignment. That we both care this much about our thing, whatever it is, means that we're probably more alike than we realize. It's a bit like what Jonathan Haidt said in a service a couple of weeks ago. When we look at each other and see differences, it just means we aren't looking deep enough. Underneath there are core values that we share. We all want to be safe, we want to be free, we love our parents and kids and spouses, and we yearn for connection. I don't want to see conservatives as the enemy, even though I'm supposed to. And I want them to see something in me that they recognize. So maybe what the world needs right now is a little caffeine diplomacy. The first wavers meet the third wavers, over whatever kind of coffee is being served. If your artisanal brew is too bitter for me, I can add milk, maybe a little sugar. It's good for me to stretch my preferences. And if your Timmy's milk bomb isn't quite to my taste, I can down it while it's piping hot and still get a pleasant little buzz. And it's good for me to learn to be less fussy. The point is, we're having coffee together. It's a heck of a start. And now, because it was so great the first time, and because this song, like coffee itself, good coffee itself, gets better after it cools, a reprise of Jabba Jabba.
Now this time, I need your help. 1, 2. There, go. 1, 2. Not yet. Not yet. I'm getting them going. Do you know how to snap your fingers? 1, 2. Yeah. 1, 2. 1, 2. 2, 3, 10.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Jabba Jabba, it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Jabba and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. I love Jabba, sweet and hot. Whoops, Mr. Bodo, I'm a coffee pot. Shoot me a pot and I'll pour me a shot. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Oh, send me a slug in that wonderful world. You know that I love you like a slug in a jug. A slice of onion and a raw one. Draw one. Waiter, waiter, percolator. I love coffee, I love tea. I love the Jabba Jabba, it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Jabba and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Boston beans, soybeans. I said those bitty, bitty little green beans. Cabbage and greens. You know that I know, unless it is the cherry coffee bean.
I love Java, sweet and hot. Oops, Mr. Bono, I'm a coffee pot. You shoot me the pot and I'll pour me a shot. A cup of that Zambazo.
Ooh, slip me a slug from that wonderful mug, and I'll cut a rug that's snug in a jug. Drop your nickel in my pot, Joe.
Taking it slow. Waiter, waiter, percolator. I love coffee and tea. I love the Jabba Jabba, it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Jabba and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
Just as good the second time. Even better. Our outreach recipient this month is the youth programs at Hollyburn Community Services. This charity runs North Shore Safe House, which is a really important emergency stopgap for youth who are in trouble or in crisis or who have just turned the corner and are trying to get back on their feet. Programs like this are a vote for the kind of world we want. Please give as generously as you're able. You can donate the old-fashioned way, or you can do it in one of these two digital ways with your phone or to text. for these gifts and all you do, thanks Elaine, to help weave this tapestry of love that we call community. Thank you. It's not your motorbike, is it, Jimmy? No. Okay, announcements. It's Super Sunday again, which means that everybody's invited downstairs for, I think it's sandwiches and soup today. Please do come join. I think there might be some more coffee still left, and you can give it another go after what you've heard today, see if it tastes any different. Movie night is coming up, the last one, I believe, Brian. And these movie choices have been great. And this is an amazing place to see a movie. Just say Brian's choices. And I don't know if anyone's been here, but it feels like an old style movie theater when it gets going here. Did anybody see the Oscars this year? Because one of the big winners was Anora, and the guy who was the writer-director of Anora, he made his big pitch was kind of puzzlingly, because his film's about something totally different, but he said, we've got to get people back into movie theaters. We've got to get people back into the experience of seeing a movie together, which is what has been happening here. So think about coming out for the last one in the series here, which is Arrival, which I've seen and is excellent. Okay. This is the last week to see Children of God at the Culch. You got one more shot at it, I think. It's a very powerful play. We saw it last night. And the reason I'm mentioning it is there's going to be a discussion. I think at this point, like half of us at least have seen it. So after the service next week, there's going to be a conversation about that play, because it's the kind of play that needs to be metabolized together. Mythology, then and now. Wayne and Marga Hannah have been offering this via Zoom. There's a lot of expertise there. Wayne, has it been going well? How's the turnout? Good. All right.
30 people internationally.
Oh, right. From how far away?
France.
Wow. How'd word get out? Right, us. Okay. Well, anyway, I encourage everyone to consider checking it out. There's a lot of wisdom behind that one and in that one. Harmony Mountain Singers. We have the time, so I'm hitting a lot of the points from our e-bulletin here. Catherine Nicholson's Harmony Mountain Singers. This event's a ways off, but you can still buy tickets, and it's a fundraiser for this congregation. So it's an old fun fest. It's a fun fest item, and everything goes toward keeping the power on here. So it's a wonderful thing. So there was a scheduled garden party on this Saturday, yesterday, I guess, and it was canceled at the last minute. But there were some people who could not be stopped from showing up anyway for the work party. So special thanks to Jim Thurman for contributing treasures, time, and talent, and Brian Wellwood shored up the garden's border. Megan, Eileen, Kay, Annie, Jean, and Stuart worked in other areas. Okay, so the next phase is coming, and it's this next Saturday, and it's moving soil, so it's a big job. And please watch notices from Jenny about that. I'm sorry, but I messed you up because there was no slide about this one. Next Sunday, tell me your story. So this is a service that Bob and Ruth and I are doing together, and it's about oral history. It's about the importance of asking people in your life, particularly older people in your life who've never really told their story all at once and got it recorded and preserved for history, why that's important. And we'll talk a little bit about the process. We've each been on both sides of the equation there, being interviewed and interviewing, and we'll talk about how assembling a profile of somebody, what that feels like and why it matters. And I think that might be it. I think. Does anyone else have any other announcements? Anything to add here? We got a minute or two. No? If not.
Art group for the backdrop are meeting on the stage after church. Thank you.
Okay. If that's it for announcements, well, let's slide right into a congregational hymn number 368. Let's all stand as you're able and bring this one home.
So congregation, there are two parts. You guys are going to sing along with the sopranos and altos that goes, sing to the power of the faith within, that part. Ignore the tenors and basses. It's good for them. It's good for them. Okay, Catherine, take it away. That's a bit fast, Catherine. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Sing to the power of the faith within. Sing to the power of the hope within. Sing to the power of the hope within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Sing to the power of the hope within. Sing to the power of the love within. Sing to the power of the love within. Lift up your voice. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Sing to the power of the love within. Sing to the power of the joy within. Sing to the power of the joy within. Lift up your voice. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Sing to the power of the joy within.
So, scientists at Newcastle University in the UK have been looking into caffeine's use in nature. And one of the things the caffeine molecule does is it lures pollinators. Researchers found that nectar laced with caffeine helps bees remember where the flower is, increasing the chances of a return visit. You know where I'm going with this. One of the reasons we serve coffee here is to lure pollinators. You get a little hit of caffeine at NSUC, and next time Sunday rolls around, you think of us and you remember where we live. May it ever be so. Let's put out our flame. We extinguish this flame. The world calls us to live with depth, meaning, and purpose. Thank you for indulging me a little bit with this a little bit way out there subject this week. I hope you can join us downstairs, and if you do, try the coffee again and see if it tastes different. Thank you to everyone who made this service possible today, and thank you for continuing to show up and for keeping the energy up around this enterprise. It's working, I think. Let's circle around. All three. Yeah.